Chapter 1. The First Anomaly. Dr. Elena Marquez squinted at the satellite feed, her coffee long forgotten on the desk beside her. The control room at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center hummed with tense activity, monitors glowing with various data streams. The solar irradiance graph on her screen showed a 1.2% drop in visible light over 3 days, a deviation far beyond normal solar cycle fluctuations. As a senior astrophysicist, she had seen countless data anomalies, but this one made her stomach tighten. Jack Harper, a rugged former pilot, now a systems analyst, leaned over her shoulder, his brow furrowed as he studied the graph. "That's not just sunspots, Elena," he said, his voice low. Soho detected a dense cloud of interstellar dust particles in the outer solar system 2 weeks ago. Could this be related? Elena nodded, her fingers flying over the keyboard to pull up the latest interstellar medium reports. Data from the Interstellar Boundary Explorer, IBEX, showed a significant increase in dust grains larger than 10 micrometers from the direction of Ophiuchus. These grains, composed of silicates and carbon compounds, streamed into the solar system at 25 kilometers per second, faster than typical interstellar dust flux. "If this cloud is as dense as these readings suggest," she said, "it could block substantial sunlight within weeks. The cumulative effect on Earth's climate could be catastrophic." Jack frowned, turning to his terminal to check climate model simulations. A 10% reduction in solar irradiance over a year would drop global average temperatures by 5 to 6 degrees Celsius. Agriculture would collapse. Oceans would start to freeze. "Let's not jump conclusions yet," Elena interrupted, though her voice lacked conviction. She opened a communication channel to the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, requesting real-time updates from Voyager 2. Minutes later, confirmation came. Voyager 2's plasma spectrometer detected a sharp increase in dust particle collisions. The solar system was indeed entering a dense interstellar dust cloud. Back in the control room, tension thickened. Dr. Marcus Chun, a climatologist, joined them, his face grave. "Initial projections," he said, pulling up a graph. "If the dust cloud continues to thicken, by month's end, surface sunlight could reduce by 5%. That's enough to trigger noticeable cooling in higher latitudes." Elena stepped outside for a breath of air. The midday sky in Maryland seemed pale, the sun's warmth muted. Her phone buzzed. NOAA alert. Unusual temperature drops in the Arctic. The first impacts were visible. She thought of Inuit communities, their ice hunting grounds now facing unexpected challenges. Returning to her desk, she compiled a report for NASA's administrator. Conservative models predicted 20% irradiance reduction over 6 months. Worst case, 40% in 3. Either way, she typed, Earth's ecosystems and human civilization face severe, multifaceted consequences. As afternoon turned to night, more data arrived. Hubble images showed the dust cloud as a faint, diffuse haze around the sun, particles scattering light. On Earth, astronomers reported a brighter night sky, dust reflecting starlight, creating a permanent starlight twilight. But this beauty masked danger. Back at NASA, satellite images showed the dust cloud thickening. "Elena," Jack called, urgency in his voice. "ESA's updated data. Dust density is 30% higher than thought. Projections need revising." Elena's heart sank. She contacted Dr. Chin again. "Marcus, with his density, how soon for a 10% drop?" 2 weeks, maybe less," he replied, tone grim. Elena rushed to the mission operations room. Engineers worked feverishly. "If irradiance drops faster, communication satellites are at risk," said Dr. Raj Patel, senior engineer. "Power levels might drop below operational thresholds." Elena nodded, thinking of global networks, GPS, internet, weather satellites. "Earth-based solar farms?" she asked. Raj sighed. Even with tracking systems, reduced light cuts output. Grid operators fear blackouts, especially in regions relying on solar. News spread. Social media buzz with rumors and fear. Scientists worldwide share data. Europe's ESA, Japan's JAXA, China's CNSA. A global effort, yet unity tinged with panic. By midnight, the first public statement urged global emergency preparedness. Stock markets reacted wildly. Renewable energy stocks surged, speculators betting on innovation. Agricultural stocks plummeted. Farmers like Tom in Kansas faced ruin. His corn stunted, cows restless. Reports flooded in wheat fields in Russia, rice paddies in India, all affected. As Elena drove home, exhausted, she stared at the sky. Stars blazed, but the sun's absence loomed. She thought of her daughter, Lily, at college. How would this affect her future? Humanity's future. This was just the beginning. Weeks, months of struggle against a cosmic force. Survival probability progress bar, 70%. Chapter 2. The Deepening Crisis. Over the next week, the interstellar dust cloud's density continued to increase. Solar irradiance dropped by another 3%, pushing the cumulative reduction to 4.2%. Global temperatures began to plummet. In Canada, temperatures in Ottawa dropped to -5 degrees Celsius in late May, a stark contrast to the usual 15 degrees Celsius. Crops withered in the fields, and farmers scrambled to cover their plants. But the cold was relentless. Elena sat in a marathon meeting at NASA, her eyes fixed on the latest satellite imagery. The dust cloud appeared as a thick, gray veil around the sun. We're projecting a 10% reduction by the end of the week, Deduction said, his voice weary. This is happening faster than we thought. Jack was at the Goddard Space Flight Center's technical hub, working with engineers to adjust satellite orbits. If we can tilt some satellites to maximize sunlight exposure, maybe we could buy them more time, he suggested. But the team knew it was a temporary fix. The real problem was Earth's power grids. Solar energy production had dropped by 30% globally, and even wind energy was affected as weather patterns shifted erratically. In D.C., government officials held emergency briefings. The president addressed the nation. We're activating all emergency power reserves. Nuclear plants will increase output, and we're prioritizing energy for hospitals, transportation, and food production. But even as he spoke, blackouts were reported in parts of Texas and California. Elena's phone rang. Her daughter Lily was on the line. Mom, the campus is freezing. They're talking about evacuating to warmer states. Lily said. Elena's heart ached. Stay safe, honey. They'll have a plan, she said, though uncertainty gnawed at her. Back at NASA, a new threat emerged. The dust particles, rich in carbon, began interacting with Earth's atmosphere. We're detecting increased carbon monoxide levels in the stratosphere, said Dr. Lisa Ross, an atmospheric chemist. It's like a slow-motion smog, but on a global scale. This could further reduce sunlight penetration and affect air quality. Jack noticed something else. Satellite communications were degrading faster. Elena, we're losing contact with some weather satellites. Without them, forecasting becomes almost impossible. How do we prepare for storms or temperature drops? The survival probability progress bar now hovered at 60%. As the week progressed, the world turned grayer. Days were dim, like permanent overcast, and nights were brighter with starlight. But the beauty was deceptive. In Alaska, the permafrost began to refreeze prematurely, disrupting oil pipelines. In Europe, the Rhine River started to ice over, halting barge traffic and disrupting supply chains. Elena coordinated with international teams. The Chinese Academy of Sciences proposed a joint mission to study the dust cloud's composition up close. We could launch a probe within a month, they said. But Elena knew time was short. By then, the cloud might be even denser. But we have to try, she replied. Jack worked on a contingency plan for the power grid. If we can reroute power from regions with more hydroelectric capacity, like the Pacific Northwest, we might stabilize a grid in the east. But it required seamless coordination between utilities, something that had never been tested on such a scale. Meanwhile, on the ground, communities began to organize. In New York, neighborhoods set up shared heating centers in community halls. Volunteer networks formed to check on the elderly and disabled. But these were small lights in a growing darkness. As Elena reviewed the day's data, she couldn't shake a sense of dread. The dust cloud showed no signs of thinning. Each hour, more sunlight was blocked. She thought of the entropy law. Disorder increasing. Was humanity's civilization just a fragile bubble in the vast, cold universe? But there was no time for despair. She turned back to her terminal, ready to fight another day. The survival of millions depended on every decision they made. Chapter 3. Oceanic Collapse and Desperation. The third week into the dust cloud's invasion, solar irradiance had plummeted to 12% below normal levels. The consequences rippled through Earth's ecosystems, but none were as immediately catastrophic as the changes in the world's oceans. Elena, poring over satellite data from NASA's Aqua and Terra satellites, noticed a worrying trend. "Jack, look at this," she said, her voice tight. The chlorophyll concentration maps showed vast swathes of the ocean turning pale. Phytoplankton, the base of the marine food chain, were dying off. Phytoplankton produced nearly half the world's oxygen, she said. If this continues, we're looking at an oxygen shortage and collapse of marine life. Jack, who had been troubleshooting a failed weather satellite, turned pale. "What about zooplankton?" "Fish," he asked. Elena shook her head. Without phytoplankton, the entire marine ecosystem unravels. Fisheries will collapse. Billions depend on seafood for protein. As if on cue, a report came in from the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO. Major fishing grounds, from the North Atlantic to the Benguela Current, were reporting catches down by 70%. "This is just the beginning," Elena murmured. Meanwhile, in the North Atlantic, ships face a new horror. The reduced sunlight had cooled the waters rapidly, and icebergs broke free from Greenland's coast earlier than ever recorded. The RMS Stella, a cargo ship en route to Europe, sent a distress signal as it narrowly avoided a collision with a massive iceberg. "Captain says it's like navigating in a nightmare," Jack said, reading the report. "Satellite imagery is spotty. We can't track all the ice." The survival probability progress bar now dipped to 50%. Elena attended a virtual summit with global leaders. The Prime Minister of India spoke of riots in cities as food supplies dwindled. "Our rice reserves are low, and the monsoon, already disrupted, may fail entirely," he said. The president of Brazil reported similar issues. The Amazon's ecosystem is stressed. Trees are losing leaves prematurely. Back at NASA, a glimmer of hope. The joint U.S.-China probe was ready for launch. But as they prepared, a solar panel on the International Space Station, ISS, failed due to reduced sunlight. Astronauts had to manually adjust its orientation, a risky maneuver. "We're one step away from losing the ISS," Jack said, "and with it, our primary platform for Earth observation." Elena's team detected another threat. The dust cloud's particles were interfering with radio communications. "It's like a cosmic static," said a technician. "GPS signals are weakening. Air travel could become impossible if this worsens." In D.C., the streets were colder. People bundled in layers even during the day. Streetlights stayed on longer, draining power. Elena walked her car, the sky a perpetual gray. She thought of Lily, now evacuated to Florida, but even their temperatures were dropping below freezing at night. That evening, a new report from the Scripps Institution of Oceanography confirmed Elena's fears. Oxygen levels have dropped by 1% globally, it stated. If phytoplankton continue to die, we could see a 5% drop within a year, catastrophic for aerobic life. Jack called her late at night. Elena, we're losing more satellites. The ones we have left are barely functional. How do we monitor the dust cloud now? We don't, she said, her voice hollow. But she knew they couldn't give up. Contact ESA and JAXA. Maybe together we can cobble together a network. As she hung up, she stared at the star, bright sky. The dust cloud was a silent predator, choking life bit by bit. But humanity wasn't dead yet. Each day, engineers, scientists, and volunteers fought on. The question was, for how much longer? Chapter 4. Tempestuous Skies. The fourth week brought with it a new nightmare, catastrophic weather systems. Elena sat in NASA's Weather Analysis Hub, her eyes fixed on a radar screen filled with swirling red and orange patterns. Jack, she said, her voice strained, these aren't normal storms. The temperature differentials are creating extreme pressure systems. Jack, beside her, nodded. The Rockies are getting hit by a blizzard, winds over 100 miles per hour, and temperatures below minus 30 degrees Celsius. And look here, he pointed to the Gulf of Mexico, unusual cyclonic activity. Normally, warm water fuels hurricanes, but now it's like the atmosphere's in chaos. Indeed, the reduced solar irradiance had thrown Earth's atmospheric balance into disarray. Cold air masses from the poles clashed violently with remnants of warmer air over the equator. In Texas, a freak ice storm paralyzed cities. Dallas, accustomed to mild springs, saw roads encased in ice, power lines snapping under the weight. We're getting reports of hypothermia cases, a NOAA official stated in a briefing. And this is just the start. The survival probability progress bar now hovered at 40%. Elena's phone rang. Lily was on the line from Florida. Mom, it's getting colder here too. The shelters are packed, but there's not enough heating. People are scared. Elena swallowed hard. Stay close to others. Honey, they'll prioritize warming centers. But she knew resources were stretched thin. Back at NASA, a glimmer of hope. ESA's remaining satellites detected a potential gap in the dust cloud's density. If we're lucky, a scientist said, maybe a small area will get more sunlight temporarily. But it was a faint hope. Meanwhile, JAXA reported that their Himawari weather satellite had failed, leaving more gaps in global monitoring. Jack worked on an emergency plan for communication. We're switching to shortwave radio for emergency broadcasts. It's old school, but it might penetrate the dust interference. They coordinated with ham radio operators worldwide, a grassroots effort to keep information flowing. In D.C., the streets were eerily quiet. People stayed indoors, fearing the unpredictable weather. Food trucks, once a common sight, were replaced by emergency rations distribution. Elena noticed a line outside a shelter. Elderly people, children, all shivering in the dim light. A new report from the World Meteorological Organization, WMO, painted a grim picture. Global average temperatures have dropped by 4 degrees Celsius in a month. This is beyond even our worst-case scenarios. And with the oceans cooling, the thermohaline circulation, critical for global climate, showed signs of slowing. Elena attended a virtual meeting with climate scientists. If the circulation stops, one warned, Europe could freeze over in winter, even more than it is now. Another added, and the monsoons, already disrupted, may cease entirely, devastating South Asia. As night fell, Elena stared at the sky. The stars were brighter, but the absence of the sun's warmth was a constant ache. She thought of the entropy law, disorder increasing, Was humanity's struggle just a fleeting effort against the vastness of space? But then she remembered Lily, the ham radio operators, the scientists still working. Civilization's resilience was being tested, but it hadn't broken yet. Elena, Jack called. We got a team ready to test the shortwave system. Come see if it works. She nodded, pushing aside her doubts. There was no time for despair. Each moment counted. The fight for survival continued, against a cosmic foe that showed no mercy. Chapter 5. The Famine Emerges. As the dust cloud persisted, the fifth week brought Earth to the brink of a catastrophic famine. Solar radiance now lingered at 15% below normal, and crops worldwide face annihilation. Elena, analyzing satellite imagery of farmlands, saw vast stretches of once green fields turn brown and withered. Jack, she said, the Midwest, America's breadbasket, looks like a desert. Wheat, corn, soybeans, all failing. Jack, who had been on a call with FEMA about disaster relief, nodded grimly. FEMA says reserves will last 3 months at most, and that's if distribution doesn't break down. Indeed, distribution was already strained. In California, ports were clogged as ships waited to unload dwindling food supplies. Truck drivers struggled to navigate ice-covered roads in the north, while in the south, unexpected frost had ruined citrus crops. We're looking at a global food shortage of unprecedented scale, stated a UN official in an emergency briefing. Africa, South Asia, regions already vulnerable will be hit first. The survival probability progress bar now dropped to 35%. Elena's team at NASA explored any glimmer of hope. What about vertical farms? Suggested a young scientist, using LED lights to simulate sunlight. But Jack shook his head. Energy grids can't support that on a large scale. Most cities are rationing power as it is. Still, some experimental farms in urban areas tried. Their lights a faint glow in the dim world. In D.C., lines for emergency rations grew longer. Elena witnessed a scuffle at a distribution center. 2 men fighting over a bag of rice. This is just a beginning, a police officer told her. When people get truly hungry, it'll be worse. Lily called from Florida, her voice weak. Mom, the food here is mostly canned and tasteless, and there's never enough. People are arguing over portions. Elena fought back tears. I'm trying to help. Honey, we're all trying. But she knew it might not be enough. A new threat emerged. Pests. With the climate disrupted, insects that thrive in the cold multiplied. In Russia, swarms of aphids destroyed the last of the potato crops. Chemical pesticides are in short supply, reported a farmer. And without bees, who've died in droves, pollination is impossible. Jack worked on a desperate plan, using drones to survey farmlands for any viable crops. Maybe some areas sheltered by mountains or buildings have microclimates, he suggested. The team launched a fleet of drones, their cameras scanning the devastated landscapes. Elena, meanwhile, joined a global summit on food security. The Chinese delegation proposed sharing their last rice reserves, while the Europeans offered limited supplies of preserved meats. But it's a drop in the ocean, muttered a delegate from Nigeria. My country has millions starving already. As night fell, Elena walked through the nearly dark streets of D.C. Streetlights were dimmed to save power, and the few cars on the road moved slowly, conserving fuel. She thought of the entropy law again, disorder, chaos. But then she thought of the drones still flying, the scientists still collaborating. Humanity's end wasn't written yet, but the odds were stacking against it. Elena, Jack messaged her, drones found a few fields in Idaho where wheat survived under a thick snow cover. It's not much, but it's something. She smiled faintly. Every small victory mattered. The fight for survival, against all odds, continued. Chapter 6. Industrial Collapse and Social Unrest. The 6th week marked the beginning of industrial collapse. With solar irradiance at 18% below normal and power grids straining under emergency demands, factories worldwide ground to a halt. Elena, reviewing satellite images of industrial zones, saw once bustling areas like the Ruhr in Germany and the Rust Belt in the U.S. shrouded in darkness. "Jack," she said, her voice heavy with worry. "Without consistent power manufacturing, from semiconductors to steel, can't function. And without manufacturing, we can't produce basic necessities like medicine or tools. Imagine a world where a simple aspirin becomes a luxury." Jack, working with the Department of Homeland Security on security protocols, nodded gravely. "Transportation is collapsing too. Trucks and trains rely on fuel that's harder to refine and distribute. Ships are stuck in ports. Airplanes barely fly. Just yesterday, I heard about a cargo ship in Los Angeles port. They've been waiting for weeks to unload, but there's no fuel to move the cargo inland." Social unrest spread like wildfire. In cities like Mumbai and Sao Paulo, reports of looting and riots poured in. "People are desperate," a UN official said, his voice fraught with tension. "No food, no power, no hope." In Mumbai, a group raided a warehouse looking for rice. 3 people were killed in the chaos. In D.C., the National Guard was activated to protect food distribution centers, but they were stretched thin. Elena witnessed a scene near center. A woman pleaded with guards to let her in for a ration, tears streaming down her face, while a man beside her shouted in frustration, "We've been waiting for hours." Elena's daughter, Lily, called again, her voice trembling. "Mom, there was a riot near the shelter last night. They tried to steal food. The guards fired shots. Everyone here is terrified. Some people are talking about leaving to find better shelters. But where would we go?" Elena's heart raced. "Stay inside, Lily. Don't go out unless it's safe. I'm trying to help from here, but it's so hard." But safety was scarce, and uncertainty hung over every word. A new concern: water treatment plants. "Without power," Dr. Lisa Ross said, her face pale with worry, "we can't purify water. Contaminated water could cause epidemics. Think of the millions who rely on treated water. Without it, diseases like cholera or typhoid could spread like wildfire." Elena shuddered at the thought of hospitals overwhelmed by preventable diseases. Jack had an idea. "What about slow sand filters? They don't need power. They're a low-tech solution but effective. We used them in some rural projects before." Elena nodded, knowing it was a stopgap. "We need to spread this via ham radio networks. Contact every operator we know. Share the plans, the how-tos. It could save lives." At NASA, satellites fell out of orbit. Without adjustments, an engineer explained, his voice tired. The dust clouds drag and reduced solar pressure pull them down. "We've lost 3 communication satellites just this week. The GPS network is barely hanging on. Only half the satellites are operational now." Elena joined a virtual meeting with space agencies. "We could deorbit some safely," ESA suggested, "but others might crash, land unpredictably. There's a real risk of debris hitting populated areas." It added another danger to a reeling world. Yet there were glimmers of community spirit. In a neighborhood in Tokyo, volunteers distributed hand-made filters door to door, explaining how to use them with boiled rainwater. In a small town in Ohio, residents organized a water sharing system, taking turns boiling water over makeshift fires. These were small islands of order and chaos, reminders that humanity's spirit hadn't died yet. As night fell, Elena checked the survival probability progress bar. Now 30%, but she refused to yield. "Jack," she said, "we'll keep fighting. Each day, each hour, we make a difference. He nodded, and they returned to their screens, determined to squeeze utility from fading technology, hoping humanity could weather this cosmic storm. Chapter 7. Ocean Scream and Human Resolve. The seventh week brought more dire news from the oceans. NOAA's latest report showed oxygen levels dropping another 2%, driven by the continued die-off of phytoplankton. Elena, analyzing the data, felt a sense of impending doom. "Jack," she said, "the oceans are screaming. Without oxygen, marine life, from whales to tiny fish, can't survive, and neither can we in the long run." Jack, who had been coordinating with the Navy to secure remaining fuel supplies, looked up, his face haggard. "What about artificial oxygenation? Some experimental tech?" Elena shook her head. "Too little, too late. And power. Hungry. We don't have the grids for that." Yet, a team at Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution had an idea. "We could deploy underwater gliders. They're battery-powered, can measure oxygen levels more accurately. Maybe find pockets where life clings on." Elena nodded, grateful for any initiative. "Do it. Every data point matters." The team worked frantically, checking each glider's battery and sensors. As the first glider was lowered into the cold Atlantic, they hoped it would send back vital data, a lifeline in understanding the ocean's collapse. On land, the cold was unrelenting. In Canada's prairies, temperatures dipped to minus 40 degrees Celsius. Permafrost creeping south. Farmers in the U.S. Midwest, who had hoped for a miracle, watched as even the hardiest winter wheat succumbed. "It's like the Earth's gone hostile," one farmer told a ham radio operator. His voice was filled with despair, but also a hint of defiance. "We're trying to save some seeds, though. Maybe if the sun comes back, we can plant again." Social structures were fracturing, but some fought to hold them together. In a suburb of Atlanta, a group of teachers and firefighters set up a community school in a local church, teaching kids, keeping hope alive. "We can't let education die," said Miss Thompson, a veteran teacher. "These kids are our future." Each day, they taught basic math, reading, and science, using whatever books and materials they could find. The kids, bundled in layers, listened intently, their eyes still filled with curiosity. One young student, Mia, asked, "Will we ever see the sunlight before?" Miss Thompson paused and said, "We don't know, but we must keep learning so we're ready for whatever comes." Lily in Florida joined a volunteer group. "Mom, we're distributing what little food we have more fairly now, and teaching people basic first aid. It's not much, but it helps." Elena felt a flicker of pride. "That's amazing, Lily. Every bit of kindness counts." Lily's group also started a small garden in the shelter's backyard, using seeds saved from rations. It was a long shot, but in the dim light, they hoped some plants would grow. They watered the soil with precious boiled rainwater. Each drop a symbol of hope. At NASA, a last-ditch effort, using the remaining functional satellites to create a makeshift early warning system for extreme weather. "If we can predict blizzards or freezes even a few hours early," Jack said, "we might save lives." The team worked around the clock, coding algorithms on aging computers. Every line of code was a battle, as the computers often froze or crashed. But they persevered, knowing each second counted. "Just got this algorithm to work. Let's test it," shouted one programmer, her voice hoarse from lack of sleep. A new threat: the dust cloud's effect on the ozone layer. "Carbon-rich particles are accelerating ozone depletion," Dr. Lisa Ross warned. "UV radiation could spike. Even with less sunlight, what gets through is more dangerous." Sunscreen, once a summer novelty, was now a survival necessity, but supplies were limited. In response, A chemist in Texas shared a recipe over ham radio for a homemade sunscreen using natural oils and zinc oxide. It was a risky alternative, but many were desperate enough to try. "I made this lotion. Hope it works," said an elderly man in a radio broadcast, his voice trembling. Yet humanity's creativity hadn't faded. In India, villagers repurposed old saris as UV-blocking curtains. In Australia, surfers used wax to coat windows, reducing UV penetration. These ingenuities, shared via ham radio, were tiny flames against the cold. As night fell, Elena looked at the survival probability progress bar. 25%. But she thought of the underwater gliders, the community schools, Lily's volunteer work. "We're still here," she murmured. "Still fighting." And with that, she returned to her terminal, determined to wring every possible use from their dwindling resources. The battle for civilization survival was far from over. Chapter 8. Blackout and Breakthroughs. The 8th week dawned of the new crisis. A massive blackout swept across the East Coast, plunging cities from New York to D.C. into darkness. At NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center, emergency generators hummed to life, casting a dim yellow light over the control room. The air was thick with tension as monitors flickered back on. Elena gripped the edge of her desk, her knuckles white. "Jack, check the grid status," she shouted over the noise of the generators. Jack, already on the phone with PJM interconnection, frowned deeply. "It's widespread. Transformers overloaded from erratic power demands. They say it could take days to restore." Elena's mind raced. "Our backup systems can only last so long. What about the joint probe? It's set to launch in 12 hours. Without power, we can't fuel it." Just then, her phone buzzed. An update from the Kennedy Space Center. Dr. Marquez, we're on emergency power. Launch is still a go, but barely. Every system is manual now. Meanwhile, in Florida, Lily huddled in the shelter. The generators had failed, and the cold seeped in like a relentless intruder. "Mom, it's freezing here." "They say no power for heating," she told Elena over a crackling ham radio. "We're burning whatever we can find, but it's not enough." Elena's chest tightened. "Stay close to others, Lily. Share body heat. I'll see what I can do." But she knew her options were desperately limited. At NASA, Jack had an idea. What if we reroute power from non-essential systems, like the older labs? We can prioritize the probe's launch controls. Elena nodded, and they rallied the remaining staff. "Everyone, help Jack with the power reallocation. I'll coordinate with Kennedy." As they worked, a report came in. The dust cloud's density had increased by 15% overnight. "This is it," Dr. Chin said, his face ashen. "If the probe doesn't launch, we'll be blind." But against the odds, the power was rerouted. The probe, a joint U.S.-China effort, stood ready on the pad, its sleek body gleaming faintly in the dim light. At Kennedy, engineers worked manually, their breaths visible in the cold. They checked each connection with meticulous care. "Fueling complete," one shouted. "Launch in 5 minutes." Elena held her breath. Come on." The countdown echoed over the radio. 3, 2, 1, launch. The probe soared into the gray sky, a streak of hope against the backdrop of the dust-shrouded universe. Back at Goddard, they awaited data. "Come on, baby. Send something," Jack murmured, his eyes fixed on the monitor. Hours later, a signal, weak but clear. "We're getting images of the dust cloud structure," a technician shouted, jabbing a finger at the screen. "There's a thinner region like a vein. If we're lucky, it could be a path for more sunlight." Elena studied the data, her heart pounding. "It's not much, but if this vein widens, maybe 5 to 10% more sunlight could get through. For a few weeks, at least." It was a sliver of hope. She contacted global agencies. This could buy us time. Start preparing for limited agriculture in areas that might get light. But the blackout persisted. In D.C., looters took to the streets, preying on darkened stores. The National Guard struggled to maintain order. It's every person for themselves, a guard told Elena over the radio. But some are helping. A group of kids is sharing their rations with the elderly, saying they need it more. Lily's voice crackled again. Mom, they're talking about evacuating further south. But where? Everywhere's cold. Elena thought of the probe's data. Lily, if this vein works, maybe Florida will get a bit more light. Hold on. As night fell, Elena checked the survival probability progress bar. 23%. But the probe's data was a spark. We found a chink in the enemy's armor, she told Jack. Now, let's see if it's enough. The fight continued, each moment a battle for humanity's future. Chapter 9. Fleeting hope and lingering despair. The thin vein in the dust cloud brought a glimmer of hope. Over the next few days, regions like Florida and parts of the Caribbean saw a 7% increase in solar radiance. It was a far cry from normal, but enough to raise spirits. Lily called Elena, her voice filled with wonder. Mom, the sun's actually warm today. Some plants in our garden are perking up. Elena smiled, but her joy was tempered by reality. That's great, honey, but don't get too hopeful. It might not last. At NASA, the team analyzed the probe's data furiously. The vein's unstable, Jack said, pointing at a graph filled with erratic lines. It could widen or collapse tomorrow. Elena nodded, her eyes fixed on the flickering data. But for now, we'll use it. Notify agricultural agencies. Focus on quick, growing crops like radishes and spinach. Every day of sunlight counts. Yet, the reprieve was short-lived. In the Midwest, the cold remained a relentless foe. A blizzard hit Minnesota, with winds gusting at 120 miles per hour. We're losing more power lines, reported a local official, his voice strained over the radio. And with the brief sunlight, some ice melted, causing floods in South Dakota. Homes are flooding, and people are scrambling to save what little they have. The image of families huddled in water, log basements, clutching heirlooms and emergency rations, painted a picture of despair. Social tensions flared like a wildfire. In Texas, a fight broke out at a fuel distribution center. People are desperate for gas to run generators, a sheriff told Elena. We're trying to keep order, but it's like a powder keg. I saw a man clutching a gas can, his eyes wild, as others tried to take it from him. It's every person for themselves out here. Elena's team faced another problem. The probe's data transmission was erratic. The dust cloud's interference is getting worse, a technician said, pounding a fist on the desk in frustration. We might lose contact soon. Every bit of data is a battle now. Meanwhile, in the oceans, the oxygen crisis deepened. A research vessel in the Pacific, its hull creaking in the cold, reported dead zones expanding. It's a graveyard, said the captain, his voice hollow over the satellite link. No fish, no life. Just endless stretches of water that can't sustain anything. The few divers we sent down said it's like swimming in a tomb. Jack worked on a plan to maximize the fleeting sunlight. What if we use mirrors, like those solar furnace projects, to concentrate light on farms? Elena sighed, rubbing her temples. It's risky. We don't have the resources for large-scale mirror deployment, but maybe in small areas. Let's try in a few experimental farms and see. Lily's shelter in Florida tried the mirror idea. They used salvage car mirrors, propping them up with makeshift stands. It's helping a bit, she said, her voice filled with cautious optimism. Our radishes are growing faster, But every time the wind blows, the mirrors shift and we have to readjust them. It's a constant battle. But then disaster, the dust cloud shifted. The vein began to close. No! Elena shouted as she saw the irradiance graphs plummet. Solar light levels dropped by 3% in hours. Lily called, distraught, "Mom, the sun's dimming again. Our plants, the radishes are wilting. The leaves are turning brown right before our eyes." At NASA, the survival probability progress bar hit 20%. "We're losing this battle," Jack said, his shoulders slumped. But Elena shook her head. "Not yet. We'll keep fighting. Maybe the probe will find another vein, or we'll discover a new way to adapt." As night fell, Elena stared at the sky. The stars were brighter, but the brief taste of sunlight made the darkness more profound. Yet, in the dim light of the control room, the team kept working. Each keystroke, each plan, a defiance against the cosmic odds. The question loomed, how much longer could humanity hold on? Chapter 10. The Icy Grip of Despair. As the dust cloud closed off the fleeting vein of sunlight, Earth plunged back into deeper cold. The survival probability progress bar now hovered at 18%, a stark reminder of humanity's dwindling chances. In Florida, Lily's shelter became a fortress against a returning chill. "Mom, the cold's worse than ever," she told Elena over the ham radio, her voice trembling. "Our makeshift mirrors are useless now. The few plants we had are dead. Last night, a group of desperate people tried to steal our coal. They broke down the front door, shouting and pushing. We fought them off with whatever we could, sticks, kitchen knives. One of our volunteers got hurt, but we managed to keep the coal. But how long until we can't?" Elena's heart ached. "I'm sorry, Lily, but keep the shelter warm however you can. Maybe we'll find a way to send more supplies." At NASA, the team faced a new horror. The probe signal weakened and died. "We've lost contact," a technician said, slamming his fist on the console in frustration. "No more data on the dust cloud structure." Jack growled, "Now we're truly blind." But Elena refused to give in. "Gather everyone. Let's analyze the dust cloud trajectory from the past 2 weeks to see if we can find a pattern." She rallied the team, her voice firm, though inside she feared the worst. Meanwhile, the oceans told a tale of ruin. Satellite images showed the North Atlantic freezing over, icebergs multiplying like ghosts on the water. A small fishing boat in Iceland waters sent a final distress signal. "We're surrounded by ice. Engines failing. Help," then silence. Shipping lanes were abandoned. The few ships at sea risked becoming icebound. "This is the end of global trade," a maritime official stated, his voice hollow. "No goods, no fuel, no hope. The few tankers left are stranded, their crews starving." On land, food became a lethal commodity. In India, a riot over a truckload of rice left dozens dead. "It's madness," reported journalists, dodging tear gas. "People are willing to kill for a bag of grain." I saw a mother clutching a handful of rice, screaming at a mob to stay back. Her child was crying, but no one cared. In the U.S., FEMA announced ration cuts. Reserves are down to 2/3. We can't sustain everyone, prioritizing children and the elderly, but even that's not enough. Elena's team tried a desperate measure, using leftover rocket fuel to power a makeshift heating system for DC shelters. "It's not much," Jack said, monitoring the fuel levels, "but it might keep a few hundred people warm. Each drop of fuel is like liquid gold now." The shelters, once bustling with activity, were now quiet, people huddled under every blanket they could find. Lily's shelter in Florida received a shipment of coal, a rare treasure. "We'll burn this sparingly," her manager said. eyeing the small pile. Each piece is a lifeline. But coal was scarce. Most of the world had turned to burning whatever organic matter they could find. Furniture, books, even old clothes. In a Detroit shelter, a family burned a cherished photo album, the smell of burning paper filling the air. "Sorry, Grandma," whispered a child, "but it's so cold." A new threat emerged, frostbite epidemics. With limited heating, hospitals in the north were flooded with cases. "We're amputating limbs at an alarming rate," a surgeon told Elena, his hand shaking. "No anesthesia, just whiskey. It's like the Dark Ages." Yesterday, a young boy came in, his fingers black with frostbite. We had to cut them off. He screamed, but there was nothing else we could do. Yet some innovated. A group of engineers in Germany created a pedal power generator, simple but effective for small shelters. "Share the design." Elena urged, her eyes lighting up. Every bit of energy helps. The engineers shared detailed blueprints over the ham radio network. In a Paris shelter, a group of volunteers built one, pedaling furiously to generate power for a single light bulb. "It's not much," said a volunteer, "but it gives us hope." As night fell, Elena checked on Lily again. "Mom, someone tried to steal our coal last night. We fought them off, but how long until we can't?" Elena had no answer. She looked at the survival probability bar, 18%, but she thought of the pedal generators, the coal in Lily's shelter. "We're still here," she said, "still fighting." The cold was fierce, but humanity's will, though battered, endured. Chapter 11, The Shadow of Disease. As the cold tightened its grip, a new menace emerged, disease. In a shelter outside Chicago, a cough turned into a fever, then into a nightmare. The shelter, a former school gymnasium, was overcrowded with hundreds of people huddled together for warmth. The air was thick with the smell of unwashed bodies and desperation. "We've got multiple cases of pneumonia," a volunteer doctor told Elena over the radio, his voice hoarse from exhaustion. "No antibiotics, no proper ventilation. It's spreading like wildfire." Elena's stomach churned. How many infected? Dozens already, and with the cold, people's immune systems are shot. The elderly and children are the most vulnerable. Mrs. Thompson, an 80-year-old, passed away this morning. Her body was so weak she couldn't fight it. Lily's shelter in Florida wasn't spared. "Mom, Maria, she's coughing up blood," Lily said, her voice shaky. "The volunteer nurse says it's tuberculosis. We're trying to isolate her, but the shelter's too crowded. There's only one small room, and we have to move her every few hours so others can use it. She's so weak, Mom. I feel so helpless." Elena felt helpless too. "Stay away from her, Lily. Use cloths over your faces. Maybe tear up some old sheets to make masks." But she knew such measures were barely effective. At NASA, the team faced its own crisis. Jack's assistant, Mark, fell ill with a high fever. "It's just a cold," he insisted, but his face was pale and his hands trembled as he tried to type. Elena forced him to rest. "We need you alive, Mark. Conserve your strength." Yet work didn't stop. The team, worried about Mark, analyzed dust cloud data from memory, try and predict its next move. Sarah, another team member, had developed a persistent cough but refused to take a break. "We can't afford to slow down," she said, her voice weak. Each member feared they might be next to fall ill. Meanwhile, in India, a typhoid outbreak killed hundreds. "No clean water, no sanitation," reported a local official. "We're burying the dead in mass graves. Families are too afraid to even mourn properly." Just yesterday, a young boy lost his entire family. He's wandering the streets, alone. In Africa, Malaria cases spiked. Mosquitoes, thriving in stagnant water, spread the disease faster than ever. A village elder said, "We used to have nets, but now they're all torn. The children are getting sick one after another." A glimmer of hope. A group of pharmacists in Spain found a way to synthesize basic antibiotics using old school methods. "It's not perfect," they said over the ham radio, "but it can save some lives. We're working day and night, using whatever chemicals we can find. It's like being back in medieval times, but we have to try." Elena urged global networks to share the recipe. Every dose counts. If we can get this to more places, maybe we can stop some of the deaths. Lily's shelter tried to implement better hygiene. "We're boiling water for drinking," she said, "and burning herbs like sage to purify the air. It's an old folk remedy, but maybe it helps. We're also trying to make soap from animal fat and ash. It's rough, but better than nothing." But the disease tide rose. In D.C., the National Guard set up quarantine zones. "It's brutal," a guard said. "Families torn apart, but we have to stop the spread." Just today, a mother begged us not to take her child. She was screaming, "He's not sick, just cold." But we had to take him. I hope we're doing the right thing. Elena checked the survival probability progress bar. 15%. But she thought of the Spanish pharmacist, Lily's herbs. "We're still fighting," she told Jack. "As long as there's breath, there's hope." The battle against cold, hunger, and now disease raged on. Each day it tested humanity's resolve. Chapter 12. Flickers of Human Spirit. Amidst the relentless cold and the spread of disease, humanity's spirit, though battered, refused to be extinguished. In various corners of the world, small acts of culture and unity emerged as beacons of hope. In a village in Norway, a group of musicians gathered in a nearly empty church. The musicians had salvaged the old piano from a flooded concert hall, spending days repairing its water-damaged keys. Using a few string instruments, a violin with a cracked body, a cello missing a string, they played classical pieces. As they launched into Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, their music echoing to the cold air, even the cold, numbed inhabitants felt a stir of emotion. A young girl, who had lost her parents to the cold, whispered, "It's like the sun is touching my heart." "It's our way of saying we're still here," said one musician over the ham radio. "Music connects us, even in darkness." In Japan, elders gathered children in a shelter to tell traditional folk tales. One elder told the story of Mamataro, the peach boy. "He faced giants and demons," she said, "but with courage and kindness he triumphed. So will we." The children, their faces pale from cold and hunger, listened intently, their eyes briefly lighting up with imagination. "Stories keep our culture alive," said the elderly woman. "They remind us of who we are and what we've overcome." At NASA, a faint glimmer of scientific hope. The team had been working for days, analyzing data from a forgotten satellite. "Look here," a young scientist shouted, pointing a graph. "The particle density. It's not much, but there's a slight reduction in carbon-rich particles in one area. Maybe, just maybe, it could lead to more sunlight in a month or two." "It's too early to tell," Jack said, poring over the data. "But it's a cautious hope. We'll check with historical models. Let's share this with global agencies. Let them know there's a sliver of possibility." Lily, in Florida, decided to organize a small celebration in her shelter. "We have a little extra rice and some herbs," she told Elena. "We're making a communal meal, and we'll share stories. It might boost morale." As the shelter's inhabitants gathered, they decorated with hand-drawn pictures on scraps of paper. When they shared the rice, mixed with foraged herbs and a little salt, a man stood up. "I remember my grandmother's cooking," he said, smiling through tears. A volunteer played a guitar, its strings slightly out of tune, but the music was warm. Slowly, others joined in, their voices weak but united. Lily watched, her heart full. "This is what we fight for," she said. "Each other and these moments of connection." Yet, the harsh reality lingered. In Australia, a wildfire, fueled by dry, cold vegetation, raged through a sparsely populated area. A firefighter, now without modern equipment, tried to create a fire break with old-fashioned tools. "It's hopeless," he said, "but I have to try. There are still animals in there." In South America, indigenous Mapuche communities, already struggling, faced dwindling hunting grounds as animals perished in the cold. Gathering in their remaining huts, their elder said, "The animals are gone, but our traditions stay. We'll hunt smarter, share more." They taught the young ones ancient tracking skills, adapting to the new cold. But the small acts of humanity multiplied. In a London shelter, a teacher started a makeshift school using chalk and slates. "Education is our future," she said. "Even if it's just reading and writing, it gives children purpose." In New Delhi, a group of artists painted murals on shelter walls, bright colors in a dim world. "Art reminds us of beauty," said one artist. Elena checked the survival probability progress bar, 14%. But she thought of the Norwegian musicians, the Japanese storytellers, Lily's meal. "We're more than just survivors," she told Jack. "We're creators, connectors. That's what keeps us going." As the team continued their work, the world outside remained cold and dangerous, but these flickers of human spirit offered a fragile yet vital warmth. Chapter 13. Hope and Despair Intertwined. The faint hope from NASA's discovery of the dust cloud shift spurred global efforts. Scientists worldwide scrambled to confirm the data. "If this holds," a Chinese climatologist said, "we might see a 10% increase in sunlight in targeted regions." But it's a gamble. Elena coordinated with teams, her eyes fixed on new satellite images, blurry, but showing a possible weakening in the cloud. Every pixel was analyzed with desperate hope, as if each one held the key to humanity's survival. Meanwhile, in Europe, the cold snapped power lines like twigs. In a small Polish village, the inhabitant huddled in a ramshackle communal barn, cold wind howling through the broken wall cracks. With no power, they resorted to burning old furniture, salvage from abandoned houses. The smell of burning would mix with the stench of desperation, each flicker of the flame casting an orange glow on tired and anxious faces. "It's our only choice," an elder said, coughing from the smoke, his eyes red and watering. "Better a warm night than freezing." But the smoke filled lungs, adding to respiratory illnesses. A young child, already weak from malnutrition, struggled to breathe, his mother's tears freezing on her cheeks as she held him close, whispering prayers into his hair. In Africa, a malaria vaccine trial, halted due to chaos, restarted in a small Kenyan village. The doctor, standing in a makeshift tent, looked at the limited vials of vaccine with a mix of hope and trepidation. He prepared each injection with meticulous care, as if each dose were a precious gem. "We have to try," he said, his voice firm yet weary, even with limited supplies. The villagers, though skeptical, lined up slowly, their eyes filled with a mix of fear and anticipation. A mother held her feverish son's hand, her voice trembling. "Anything to save our children," she murmured, gently stroking his burning forehead. Lily's shelter in Florida faced a new challenge, a group of raiders from a nearby town. "They want our coal," Lily told Elena, her voice tense. "We fought them off, but they'll be back. We're making spears from old pipes, our only defense. Last time, they took our fishing gear. We can't let them take our warmth." The shelter's inhabitants worked frantically, their hands raw from shaping the metal pipes into crude weapons. Fear and determination mingled in the air as they prepared for the next attack. At NASA, Jack discovered a flaw in the data. His face paled instantly as he realized the truth. "It's a false signal," he said, slumping in his chair, paper scattering to the floor. "The satellite sensor was damaged. There's no shift." Elena's heart sank, but she refused to announce it yet. "Check again. Every sensor. We can't let this hope die easily." Her voice trembled slightly, but her resolve was unwavering. The team worked furiously, each member praying for a miracle, but every check confirmed the worst. The room grew silent, filled with a heavy sense of disappointment. In India, a monsoon, cold and icy, hit Mumbai. "Floods and frost," reported a journalist, navigating through knee-deep icy water. "People are trapped in their homes, freezing and drowning." Rescue teams, few as they were, used boats and sleds. One team found an elderly couple huddled on their rooftop, the husband shielding his wife from the icy wind with his frail body. Their eyes were filled with terror, but also a quiet determination to survive. But hope lingered. In Brazil, a community built a giant mirror array, using car mirrors and metal sheets fastened to makeshift frames. They adjusted them daily with precision, like artists crafting a masterpiece. When the first rays of sunlight reflected onto a small patch of land where tomatoes grew, everyone held their breath. Days later, the miracle happened. "It's working!" they shouted over the radio, excitement and relief pouring through their voices. "Our tomatoes are growing. The warmth from the reflected light is just enough." The community erupted in cheers, people hugging each other, tears of joy streaming down their faces. Elena, torn, finally told the truth. The data was wrong. But Brazil's mirrors, that's real, share their method. As the world reeled, these pockets of innovation and courage kept the survival probability at 13%, a thin line between collapse and perseverance. Each day was a battle, but humanity's will, though wavering, refused to break. Chapter 14. Struggles and Innovations. The news of Brazil's mirror array spread like wildfire across the ham radio networks, igniting a spark of hope. Communities worldwide attempted to replicate the idea. In South Africa, a group of engineers scoured abandoned junkyards and dilapidated buildings, gathering every car, mirror, and scrap of metal sheet they could find. Working tirelessly under the cold, dim sky, their fingers numb from the chill, they pieced together a makeshift array. "It's our last chance," said their leader, his breath visible in the frigid air. "If this works, we can grow food, stay warm." But the elements were unforgiving. A sudden gust of wind threatened the top of their structure, and they rushed to reinforce it with whatever wooden planks they could find. In a small town in Mexico, their makeshift mirrors, precariously balanced on rickety frames, collapsed in a gust of wind, shattering into pieces. "We'll try again," a local resident vowed, though despair lingered in his voice. He knelt to collect the shards, cutting his hand on the broken glass. Yet he refused to give up, determined to find a way to harness the minimal sunlight. Lily's shelter in Florida faced another raid. "They came at night," she told Elena, her voice trembling. "We fought them off, but John, he's hurt. A knife in his arm. We don't have proper medicine." The raid had been chaotic. The raiders, desperate and armed with crude weapons, had burst in shouting. John, trying to protect the coal supply, had been stabbed. Now, he lay on a tattered cot, his face pale from blood loss. Elena felt helpless, but urged her, "Keep strong. Use whatever you can to treat him." Meanwhile, the shelter's inhabitants doubled down on their defenses, reinforcing doors with scrap metal and setting up crude alarms, emptykins tied to strings, to warn of future intrusions. At NASA, Elena and the team focused on monitoring weather patterns, searching for any natural shifts that could help. "Look at this," Jack said, pointing to a map. There's a strange weather pattern over the Pacific. Cold, but with some instability. Could be a sign of something. They pored over decades. Old weather models. Their aging computers struggling to process the data. Every graph, every anomaly was examined with intense scrutiny. If we can predict even a slight warming trend, Elena said, we can alert communities to prepare. In Russia, a community decided to dig underground shelters. The surface is too cold, said an architect. Underground, we can trap heat, grow food in controlled environments. Using old mining tools, they started excavating. The ground was frozen solid, making each shovel of dirt a Herculean task. Workers took turns, their muscles aching, but each shovel of dirt was a step toward survival. They dreamed of underground greenhouses, of a haven away from the bitter surface cold. Australia faced a new nightmare. The wildfire, now meeting cold fronts, created strange, icy flames. It's like the world's gone mad, a firefighter said. The fire freezes as it burns. We can't fight it, we just run. But some scientists saw an opportunity. Ash from the fires, when mixed with certain chemicals, could create a makeshift insulation material. They worked in a crumbling lab, mixing ash with whatever substances they could find. It's a stretch, they admitted, but we have to try. The survival probability progress bar hovered at 12%. Disease still ravaged populations. In Indonesia, a dengue fever outbreak added to the chaos. No mosquito control, no medicine, reported a local official. Yet, in a Thai village, they used traditional herbal remedies to fend off mosquitoes. Elders led the way, crushing leaves and creating pastes. It's not perfect, a healer said, but it helps a little. Elena, reviewing all reports, felt a mix of despair and pride. Humans are adaptable, she told Jack. Even when everything's against us, we find ways. Brazil's mirrors, Russia's tunnels, Thailand's herbs. It's not much, but it's something. As the world continued to shiver, these scattered efforts were like stars in a dark sky. Faint, but guiding the way. Chapter 15. Geothermal Hope and New Challenges. The cold deepened, with Arctic ice caps expanding rapidly. Satellite images showed the northern hemisphere blanketed in white. This is unprecedented, a climate scientist stated, his voice trembling over the radio. Ocean currents are shifting. We're looking at a new ice age timeline accelerated. Coastal cities will face more extreme cold, and food production will drop further. In Iceland, however, a glimmer of hope, geothermal energy. Our pipes still hold, a local official said. We're sharing heat with neighboring countries. It's limited, but it's something. Laying pipes across the North Sea was a Herculean task. Workers battled freezing winds and rough seas, often pausing as icebergs drifted by. Many sections froze, reducing efficiency. Still, cities like Edinburgh received trickles of warmth. In an Edinburgh shelter, elderly residents huddled near geothermal heated vents, their hands stretched out towards a faint warmth. It's not much, one said, but it keeps my bones from aching too much. Lily's shelter in Florida found a new resource, an old fishing boat, abandoned but intact. We can use its engine for parts, Lily said. Maybe build a better generator. The team worked for days, grease under their nails, but hope in their eyes. They dismantled the engine, salvaging gears and wires. If this works, we can pump water for our tiny garden, Lily added. Every piece of metal and wire was a potential lifeline. One volunteer, a former mechanic, spent hours deciphering the engine's blueprint. This gear here, he said, could be the key to making the generator more efficient. At NASA, Elena's team detected a puzzling anomaly. A section of the dust cloud seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting. It's too early to interpret, Jack said. But if it's a pattern, maybe we can predict openings. The team worked around the clock, sleepless but driven. Their calibrated sensors, arguing over data interpretations. What if it's solar wind affecting cloud? One scientist proposed. They cross, checked decades of data, desperate to find meaning in the anomaly. Elena, her eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep, insisted. This could be our breakthrough. Keep going. In Africa, the malaria situation worsened, but a vaccine prototype developed in a makeshift lab showed 30% effectiveness. It's not much, the lead scientist said, but it's a start. Distribution was a nightmare. Cold storage was non-existent, but they used underground caves as natural freezers. Volunteers trekked through dangerous terrain, facing bandits and wild animals. One volunteer, carrying vials of the vaccine, was chased by a pack of hyenas. He hid in a cave, clutching the precious cargo, until they left. Every vial is a life, he said later. Asia faced a new threat. Acid rain, caused by atmospheric pollutants mixing with cold moisture. It's eroding crops, a farmer in Vietnam said. Our rice paddies are ruined. Fields that once teemed with life were now barren, the soil too acidic to grow anything. But in Japan, a group developed a protective coating for plants using natural waxes. They experimented for weeks, mixing waxes from local plants. It's labor-intensive, they admitted, but it saves some crops. Farmers carefully applied the wax coating, leaf by leaf, hoping their efforts would yield a harvest. The survival probability progress bar was at 11%. Yet, every innovation, geothermal sharing, the vaccine prototype, plant coatings, was a battle cry. Elena, exhausted but resolute, summed it up. We're not just surviving. We're adapting, evolving. The cold doesn't stand a chance against human ingenuity. As the world shivered, these efforts, small yet significant, kept the flame of survival alive. Chapter 16. Fragile Predictions and Persistent Struggles. At NASA, after days of relentless analysis, the team made a breakthrough. The dust cloud's breathing. It's tied to solar wind cycles, Jack exclaimed, slamming his fist on the console in triumph. We can predict short-term openings, maybe a few days of increased sunlight every few weeks. Elena's tired eyes lit up with hope. She immediately sent out alerts via the ham radio network. Prepare for brief sunlight windows. Plant fast, growing crops then. Every hour of light could save lives. News spread like wildfire. In Canada, farmers dug out old seeds, praying for enough time to grow something. In Australia, despite the icy fires, they readied small patches of land, covering them with makeshift greenhouses. In Europe, the geothermal network expanded slightly. Germany, using Iceland's tech as a blueprint, tapped into its own minor geothermal sources. Engineers worked in freezing conditions, repairing old wells and laying new pipes. It's a drop in the ocean, an engineer said, his breath visible in the frigid air, but enough to heat a few hundred more shelters. In Berlin, a shelter used the warmth to create a small nursery. Seedlings of spinach and radishes were carefully tended. Their green shoots a rare splash of color against a white-dominated world. Yet, laying pipes wasn't easy. One crew faced a collapsed tunnel, spending days clearing debris. We won't give up, their leader said, not when warmth is so close. Lily's shelter in Florida successfully built a generator from the boat's parts. It's working, she told Elena, excitement crackling in her voice. We can pump water and even power a light for a few hours. But we need more fuel for maintenance. The generator, cobbled together from rusted gears and frayed wires, hummed unevenly, but it was a rare sound of progress. However, fuel shortages loomed. A single jerrycan of gasoline was now guarded more preciously than gold. Lily's team scoured the coastline, looking for abandoned boats or fuel caches. Found a small tank, one volunteer shouted, but was half empty. Still, every drop counted. In Africa, the vaccine showed promise. Malaria cases dropped 20% in areas with distribution. It's a miracle, a village elder said, clutching a vial of the vaccine. But then a sandstorm, fierce and unexpected, destroyed part of the underground cave storage. Vials lost, a volunteer reported, his voice choked with despair. We're back to square one. The storm left a trail of destruction, burying supplies and hopes alike under layers of sand. Yet they didn't surrender. Volunteers sifted through the sand, searching for intact vials. Found one, a young nurse cried, holding a vial aloft. They redoubled efforts to secure remaining vaccines, using deeper caves and better sealing. Asia's acid rain problem persisted, but China introduced mobile shelters with acid-resistant roofs. They're makeshift, a designer admitted, but farmers can move them over crops during rain. In a rural village, farmers celebrated as their crops survived a rainstorm under the new shelters. The shelters, constructed from salvaged plastic and metal frames, creaked in the wind but held firm, protecting the last vestiges of agricultural hope. One farmer, Mr. Chan, said, "It's not perfect, but it gives us a chance. My family might eat this winter." However, new challenges emerged. In South America, a massive iceberg grounded off the coast, disrupting fishing. "Our livelihoods are gone," a fisherman said, staring at the frozen behemoth. His boat, once a source of income, now sat idle on the ice-choked shore. He and others tried ice fishing, but yields were meager. In Australia, the icy wildfires merged with cold fronts, creating a freeze-fire zone, uninhabitable and spreading. The air was filled with a strange mix of smoke and frost, making it impossible to breathe without a mask. A team of scientists tried to map the zone, but equipment failed in the extreme conditions. The survival probability ticked up to 12%, a small rise, but significant. Each prediction, each shelter, each vaccine dose, they add up, Elena told the team. We're not just reacting, we're planning. As the world faced each new day, these fragile victories were proof. Humanity's intellect and spirit were still formidable foes against the cold. Chapter 17. Dawn of a New Hope. Months rolled by, and the fruits of humanity's unwavering efforts began to bear tangible results. Thanks to NASA's predictions of dust cloud openings, communities across the globe timed their planting with meticulous precision. In Canada, fields that had once lain desolate now sprouted hardy vegetables. Turnips and cabbages, harvested just before the onset of the next cold snap. "It's a modest harvest," a farmer remarked, "but it's enough to keep my family from starving." The farmers gathered in barns, laughing as they sorted through the produce, sharing techniques like pickling and root cellaring. One elder farmer, his hands rough from years of labor, said, "This harvest is a sign we can still provide for our own." They celebrated with a simple feast, boiling turnips and sharing stories of hope for the future. Europe's geothermal network expanded steadily. France, inspired by the successes in Germany and Iceland, tapped into its own dormant geothermal reservoirs. Engineers, working tirelessly in freezing conditions, managed to channel warmth to thousands of shelters. In Paris, a community repurposed the geothermal heat to create a communal bathhouse, a luxury unimaginable mere months prior. "It's not just about the warmth," a resident reflected. "It's a reminder of what we're fighting for, a semblance of normalcy." Beyond the bathhouse, schools and converted shelters reopened. Children, bundled in layers, sat at desks, their breath visible, but their eyes bright as they learned. Teachers organized art classes, where children drew pictures of a sunlit world. In a small town in Germany, a community theater staged a play, using geothermal powered lights. The audience, bundled in coats, laughed and cried, reconnecting with the arts. Lily's shelter in Florida flourished, thanks to the generator cobbled from the old boat's parts and sunlight windows. Their garden, though small, yielded tomatoes and herbs. We're even sharing with neighboring shelters. Lily informed Elena. The generator, now better maintained, purred steadily, powering water pumps and radio. Lily's team started a workshop, repairing tools to help other shelters. When they delivered a batch of tomatoes to a nearby shelter, the gratitude was overwhelming. "This is more than food," said a recipient. "It's a sign we're all in this together." In Africa, vaccine distribution rebounded. New caves, sealed and reinforced, safeguarded vials. "Malaria cases are dropping," a doctor reported. "With better time planning, people's immune systems are stronger." In a village in Kenya, a young girl named Aisha, once bedridden, now ran through the streets. Her mother, tearful, said the vaccine saved her. Now she can dream of a future. Schools reopened, teaching both survival skills and traditional knowledge. Elders and teachers collaborated, ensuring culture and science coexisted. Asia's acid rain solutions advanced. South Korea's sprinklers, using recycled water and minerals, saved rice fields. "It's complex," an engineer admitted, "but it works." Farmers check the sprinkler systems daily, adjusting them before predicted rain. One farmer, Kim, said, "Last year my crops failed. This year they stand tall. I can feed my family." Governments across Asia share data, optimizing solutions for each region. Then, a breakthrough at NASA. The dust cloud, though dense, showed dissipation signs. Solar winds breaking it apart. Jack said. Elena, tearful, broadcasted. In a year or two, significant sunlight may return. The team planned to launch a final satellite, one last effort to monitor the cloud closely. "This could be our ticket back to normalcy," Jack said, his eyes filled with determination. Survival probability rose to 15%. In Australia, the freeze-fire zone stabilized. Families cautiously returned to affected areas, rebuilding homes. In South America, icebergs drifted, reopening fishing lanes. Fishermen, their boats now seaworthy, cast nets with hope. "This catch will feed my village," said one, smiling. Everywhere, a new energy, not just survival, but rebuilding. "We're preparing for a comeback," Elena declared. As the world shivered less, humanity's spirit blazed brighter. Communities planned for solar-powered infrastructure, for schools that taught both history and new sciences. The journey had been painful, but resilience paved the way for a new dawn, setting the stage for the final chapter of renewal. Chapter 18, Rebirth Under the Sun. As predicted, over the next year, the dust cloud thinned significantly. Sunlight, once a rare guest, began to grace the earth more frequently. In Canada, fields that had lain dormant for years soaked in the warmth, yielding bountiful harvests. Wheat and corn now grew alongside hardy vegetables, their golden stalks swaying in the breeze. Farmers, driving restored tractors, grinned as they transported crops to newly repaired silos. "It's a miracle," one farmer said, tears in his eyes. "After years of cold, we can finally feed not just our families, but entire towns." Europe's geothermal networks, now complemented by solar energy, formed a sturdy backbone for reconstruction. Cities like London and Berlin buzzed with activity. New buildings, crafted from salvaged materials, rose alongside refurbished landmarks. Schools reopened with full classrooms, children's laughter filling halls as they learned under bright, solar-powered lights. Hospitals, once makeshift shelters, now boasted advanced equipment. In Paris, the communal bathhouse still stood, but nearby, a new art center hosted exhibitions and performances, celebrating the resilience of culture. Lily's shelter in Florida blossomed into a hub of innovation. With consistent sunlight, their garden expanded into a thriving small farm, rows of tomatoes, peppers, and herbs thriving under the sun. Solar panels, neatly arranged, replaced the old generator, providing ample power. Lily's team hosted workshops, teaching neighboring shelters about crop rotation and sustainable farming. "We're not just surviving, we're thriving," Lily said, as she guided a group through their irrigation system. "This farm is a symbol of what we can build together." In Africa, the synergy of vaccines improved nutrition and sunlight spurred a population boom. New villages, with homes made from local, sustainable materials, dotted the landscape. Schools taught a blend of modern science and traditional wisdom. Aisha, the girl once saved by the vaccine, now led a team researching drought-resistant crops. "We're using ancient African farming techniques and modern genetics," she explained, showing off a trial field of new corn variants. "Our future is bright and green." Asia's transformation was equally dramatic. South Korea's rice fields, shielded from acid rain, produced record harvests. Across the continent, vast solar farms glimmered under the sun, while wind turbines spun steadily in the breeze. In rural India, villagers used wind-powered pumps to irrigate fields, reviving agricultural traditions. The acid-neutralizing sprinklers, once a temporary fix, were now integrated into smart agricultural systems, monitored by farmers via solar, charged devices. At NASA, the final satellite launch succeeded, beaming back crystal clear data. "The clouds, almost gone," Jack announced, his voice trembling with emotion. "Within months, we'll have full sunlight." Elena, watching live feeds of thriving communities, from Canadian farms to African villages, smiled. "We did it. Humanity didn't just endure, we evolved. Every struggle, every innovation led us here." The survival probability soared to 80%. In Australia, the freeze-fire zones were replaced by lush forests. Koalas climbed reed-grown eucalyptus trees, and rivers, once frozen, now flowed with life. South America's fishing industries boomed. In Brazil, ports were bustling as boats returned with abundant catches. Trade routes, once blocked by ice, now hummed with activity. As full sunlight returned, humanity stood at a crossroads, not just rebuilding, but reimagining. Cities prioritized green spaces and renewable energy. Educational systems merged technology with tradition. The lessons of the cold, resilience, cooperation, the power of human ingenuity, were embedded in global culture. Elena, in a final ham radio broadcast, said, "We faced the cold and we conquered it with grit, heart, and unity. Now, under the sun, let's build a future where every challenge is an opportunity. A future of hope, equality, and endless possibility." As the sun bathed the reborn world, humanity stepped into a new era, stronger, wiser, and united by their shared triumph. The cold was a chapter in history. Now, the story of renewal unfolded under the warm, life-giving sun.